Reverse 1999. I've honestly been enjoying this. I've mentioned it before. This is my account. I'm a Spithodia and Ezra simp. I'm waiting for Ezra to come here. In terms of progression, Insight 3 P1 37, Insight 3 P1 Spithodia, and on the Lilia, Balloon Party, Regulus, and so on. I'm waiting for Ezra to, I believe, finish off either my star team with 37 Lilia, or I'm going to drag him over to Spithodia's team. Honestly, it can kind of go either way. I'm just trying to find out in which team he fits the best in. As such, I'm not really heavily investing into other units at the moment, at least. Especially since I do want a sustain, and I don't necessarily want to continue trying to pull, because even though one of the things that Reverse does is essentially add every other 6-star into Standard unless they're a limited character like Jianzi in the future, I don't want to potentially get P2 Spithodia or P3 when Ezra's right after. In terms of the bank, I'm saving my trouble counters for the expectation that 37 and Spithodia will eventually come here. Beyond that, I have no hopes. I also at least believe that these would count towards a character rather than just a portrait. This could be a situation where these are the equivalent to spare bodies, in which if you don't have the character, they do nothing. I don't know. I'm not about to test it though. But I've been enjoying my time. Spithodia is very cute. I'm a very big fan of the tummy here. Honestly, great design. I play in JP though. I've been having a lot of fun. And even though I think for me, this has kind of taken a spot where I suppose not Genshin Impact, HSR would be, I believe the 3 gachas I primarily log in and play consistently are Genshin, followed by Arknights, then Reverse, then Nikke. This is still pretty fun. For me, my biggest issue with the game would just be the resource management aspect of it. Like, don't get me wrong, I like the characters, I like the Psy Cubes, I like the fact that these aren't necessarily limited or restricted in a weapon banner or anything of some sort. And even though portraits do have varying degrees of value, for instance, you can have some that give you essentially a flat buff, i.e. BSP2, which can make it much easier to build out that crit ratio, especially if you're looking into building out a resonance, which sucks. They aren't such a dramatic increase to where you feel like you have to get P2, P3, P4, P5 to get the maximum value out of that character. Yes, they make it very easy to get that character's full potential in terms of damage, and in some cases like P3 of 37 at least, the damage you're trying to achieve is much more accessible because you're not necessarily as required to stack Eureka over and over again in her case. I personally would say it's overall a fun experience. If you're looking for something light that isn't necessarily going to take up too much of your time, I can actually recommend this because for the vast majority of you, if you're looking to say hypothetically push through the story of the game itself, you can, with relative ease, just set the game to auto for the vast majority of the stages and then come back for the boss stage, which you're required to do, which are pretty difficult depending on the scenario you're in. It did take me forever to finally reach Limbo, but I did. I do think, in my opinion at least, one of the biggest issues that you will face if you attempt to get into the game is tier lists and information aren't necessarily as abundant as with other gachas. I think even Nikke has a better standard for the amount of information you're given in terms of a character's value. Yes, some characters in Nikke don't have any information on them whatsoever, especially if you're making a less popular character. But in Reverse, you're going to get a lot of people who say, yeah, 37's good, 30 is good, Jianzi is good, and so on. You're going to get a lot more information for the newer characters or for the upcoming ones, especially the limited one. But in regards to 5 stars and 4 stars, the information isn't as prevalent and not necessarily as clear. A prime example of this would be Pretty Win. I think that the pro and con section they add here is quite nice, but if I'm looking at the tier list itself, which I think a lot of individuals do want and would just go towards because it's very easy to consume, it doesn't give you a fair evaluation as to which unit's role is which. Like, yeah, survival and support are perfectly fine, they're clear, but not necessarily if I'm looking at just a solid comparison for who is the best to keep me alive. Some are ranked higher because of the buffs they offer your team. Whereas if I'm looking at the general healer position, if I'm looking at Sotheby, how does her healing compare to Balloon Party? Is Sotheby ranked highly because she has great raw healing, or is she ranked highly because of how good she is in poison-oriented teams? It's not as clear. And then for instance, in some cases, when you're looking at the reviews, it gives you an overall synopsis of the character, but when they talk about the investment priority of that unit and how much it takes to get them going, it's not necessarily as clear to an individual who's just starting out what that is translated to. If I'm going back in and I'm looking at Sotheby, does this mean my primary focus should be on, for instance, the Psy Cube or the Resonance? The Resonance can be very time consuming and heavy to invest into. In that position, would I rather invest into the Resonance for her? Would I rather invest into Insights or the Psy Cube itself? there isn't a solidly defined list of priorities. And this is also true for characters like 37 and Lilia. Even though they are relatively popular, I don't know, and I think it's not necessarily as clear, at what point is the investment worthwhile to stop into. For instance, Insight 3. This basic 100 critical rate bonus sounds nice on paper, but I'm coming from Genshin Impact. So if I'm looking at it in that perspective, yeah, 100 crit rate, great. But at what point would it be worthwhile to say, I don't need it? For instance, is it worthwhile to pick up that, and would I have to change the resonance cube to deprioritize crit rate and maybe go for attack percentage and or crit damage? Or how is that affected by crit resistance? Because that is a stat many characters can have, and many enemies can have as well. And I think this can kind of mess some individuals up, or at least be very confusing. It was for me. I do enjoy the game, don't get me wrong. I think that the resource grind is intensive depending on who you're going for. If you're trying to insight characters, yeah, it's expensive. If you're trying to get the fight cubes, it can be expensive. I think the wilderness does help. We're not going to talk about where I usually like building things up, but as of right now, I am just trying to get as much currency as I can. So my wilderness, yeah, this is not it. All of this is not it. So we don't have birthday like coast over here, and I'm keeping it that way. Like I started out trying to do something nice, and then it just turned into I need more points, and yeah, I still need more points. I think that reverse is very nice. I think that in terms of the events themselves, I do like this event at least, where I can individually select the rewards I want. Don't get me wrong, I do understand some individuals may prefer the RNG aspect of the prior one, and I can understand them being some fun in that, but I think just if you're trying to get in and get out and you want to individually select where your stuff is going for, it can be nice. The RNG aspect afforded you the opportunity to have a chance of getting the higher rarity and more expensive items while spending less currency. But if you were unlucky, you had to go all in, and that felt worse, especially if you weren't, let's say hypothetically speaking, you're going down here and you're only interested in these lower level rarity materials, or maybe you're only interested in the bidding box here. I think that the RNG aspect of the previous event's shop could have meant that you had to go through all of this to get the one thing you wanted. I can't wait for the hard mode stages to open, which Main's Bulletin will. The music is exceptional. The story is quite nice. The voice acting, it, in my opinion, depends on what you prefer. It's fine in JP, it's what I particularly play it in. I think that some voices for me were great. Others were like, I don't know what the hell you're saying. On a secondary note, the design's exceptional. 37, great. Boom. Spathodia, great. Tummy, wonderful. Anonly, I actually like the pre-insight art better. Lilia, I may have gotten her skin, which is very cute, but all of her designs are nice. I think I just prefer this one the most because I don't really like this. Balloon Party, I don't like her in Ian. I don't like Regulus either. Not the voice. I just don't like the design. So there are some great designs, X being one of my favorites personally, and I am so unhappy that I missed this, but okay. With that being said, I can personally recommend you play it. I think one of the benefits is that the earlier you start, if you see a character you like, you do have an opportunity to get them much more easily. I think as time goes on and the standard banner becomes, in theory, more bloated with characters, it's going to get harder to look at somebody you want, like hypothetically Tooth Fairy, and actually get them. If you like Spathodia, if you like anyone who's presently in the banner, it may be a bit of a difficult time for you to try and get them once time rolls around and the pool becomes much more bloated and you're pulling a Pickles or a Malenia and so on. So if you're interested, start now, especially if you want Spathodia, and get her. But yes, I have fun. I just wish, I suppose, there was more things to do, or at least better ways to go about getting the resources for my respective characters, specifically these higher rarity resources that I'm going to need for resonances or insights. I'm fine with these. I'm talking about these, especially when certain characters like Spathodia in this instance require the exact same materials as another 6-star I am presently raising. It becomes very difficult to get these because if you're looking at this, it's crafted in wilderness. That sounds fine in theory, but I wish there was a stage I could legitimately go to just farm it because I do think that would be better in some cases. But resource grind aside, I can recommend this game. I think it is the most casual I would play, but has a great design. I think that if you are playing it, maybe pay more attention to your wilderness, just saying, because maxing out your wilderness does give you a resource output bonus, which is nice. But either way, if you are enjoying, if you do play it, I hope you enjoy it. If you don't play it, maybe check it out, and I'll see you next time. I will aim to play Wuthering Waves, ZZZ, and so on. I have quit HSR. It's uninstalled. Either way, I'll see you next time, and goodbye.